Hey, folks, welcome back again to another episode of The Contrarians. Tim and I had such a great time dealing with Aerosmith last time. We looked at Aerosmith in the 70s for the last episode, so we thought we'd do the 80s as well. So this is an episode of a little something we call Build a Bad Album, where we essentially, look at a band's catalog, poke a little fun at them and find those crappy songs in the catalog and make basically the anti-greatest hits album. And I don't know, I think we'll tell Marco to title this album "Dump." What do you think of that?
Dump's a good one. Good,
yeah, nice and straight. The last time we called the '70s one "Crocs," but what else did we have here?
I suggested done with no ears.
Yeah, exactly. And Tragic Crutch, right? We had Permanent Abomination, and Band Keeps Coming Apart. So there you go. So we had Crocs. And now we have Dump, Aerosmith Dump. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and he's going to give us his 5 tracks from the 80s that make a terrible side one of this Aerosmith Dumps album.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, as I said when we did our 70s episode, I had a hard time coming up with 5, quote unquote, bad Aerosmith songs. I had a harder time with this one. 80s was my entry point for Aerosmith. Permanent Vacation Pump, that's when they came up on my radar. Well, technically it was Walk This Way with Run DMC, but yeah, I think I came up with a suitable list. And there's only 4 albums to, pick on. So I'm going to start us off. I've got 2 from, I've called Night in the Ruts my favorite Aerosmith album. I argued for it on the Contrarians, but I really like the other album that's sometimes considered to be a bad one because it doesn't have the original lineup. But I happen to really, really like Rockin' a Hard Place.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, 2 of the songs make my list. First one is Cry Me a River, which is an old, I don't know who wrote it. I know Julie London recorded it. It's an old song. And I really don't know why it's on this album for any other reason than they ran out of material. I have to think in some of these cases, like Milk Cow Blues and Walking in the Sand, think about it when they just stick these covers on here, it's not because they're really passionate about doing it like they were with Train Kept a Rollin' or Big 10-inch Record where it was like, hey, let's have some fun with this. I think they just ran out of material. Steven, I guess sings, a heartfelt performance in it, but I just don't see the point of it being on there. It slows everything down. It's a Rockin' a Hard Place is a pretty rockin' album. I mean, it's pretty heavy for Aerosmith. Yeah. Then this song ends side 1, and it's just complete stop. It's not a power ballad in terms of what they would end up doing later. There's no radio potential in it, so I don't know why it occupies space on an otherwise pretty good album. And my second song is actually the last song on side 2 of Rockin' a Hard Place, which is Push Comes to Shove. Now this just sounds like drugs to me. I mean, if you know the story behind this album, it's a wonder anybody made it out alive, including the production team. And you just picture everybody that's in the studio building is just, as Tyler likes to say, gacked to the nines at that point. And this just sounds like a drunken, sloppy jam. The fact that Tyler says "by cracky" in the lyrics makes him sound about 120. And he was like 33, 34 at this point, but he sounded like an old man. It's just this sloppy is the word I come up for it, and because the rest of the album is really quite good, so I kind of want to stick it to those album closers. So I guess the best thing is that if you're listening to the cassette or the vinyl, you can just stop them after the 4th track. So those are my first 2. Next one is from where I couldn't come up with anything on Done with Mirrors. I know we did a panel discussion on it. There are some things on it that sound unfinished, like the fact that there's no guitar solo on The Reason to Dog and et cetera, et cetera. But I myself couldn't think of anything that really irked me as far as a song that I'd want on this list. So that takes us up to Permanent Vacation. And I'd mentioned cover songs before. I'm going to go with I'm Down, which is a Beatles cover. It's a very early Beatles cover. It's just an old rock and roll song from the early 60s. I don't know why it's on here. It was in the single. To me, it's an Aerosmith jam that I don't know. I mean, the fact of the matter is they obviously didn't think much of it either because it's the second to last track on the album. It's almost like for Aerosmith, and they've done it 3 times. They've covered the Beatles 3 times. I thought they did a good job with Come Together, and I like their version of Helter Skelter that appeared on Pandora's Box that I think they did in 75. But I hear more Stones in Aerosmith than I hear Beatles. And to my knowledge, they've never actually covered a Stones song other than covering songs that the Stones also covered. Maybe it's because they thought it would be a little too on the nose because they always compared Steven Tyler to Mick Jagger. I'm not sure, but there could be much more personality of Aerosmith's personality interpreting a Stones song than doing it, not only a Beatles song, but an early Beatles song. So I don't really understand where the logic was there. Although I also will say that for probably a lot of people in my generation, that's the first time we ever heard that song. And I'm going to keep going on this album with the last song on it, The Movie. Now, who out there thinks of Aerosmith, you know, as this band that does these great instrumentals? Nobody. Why did they put this weird cinematic sounding instrumental that just kind of lumbers along to close the album off? I'd hate to think at this point they ran out of ideas because this is supposed to be the new supercharged Aerosmith, and I don't know why they didn't do what they did with the following album and just make it a nice, clean 10-song album. Cut those last 2 songs off of it because they don't accomplish anything. Which brings me to my 5th, and this one was hard because if Night in the Ruts is my favorite album, this one's either second or third. I really, really like this album, Pump. But I went with Don't Get Mad, Get Even. Because it doesn't sound finished to me. Like there's not much to that chorus. It's just Don't Get Mad, Get Even with Steven scatting over it. Whereas most of the songs on that album are so well constructed and so well written. This one just kind of feels like it's there and you're listening to the whole album and it sounds good. But then you really start thinking about it. So, you know, that's not the best thing that they could have put on there. There are other songs that they recorded that could have gone on there. So I don't hate the song, but it's probably my least favorite on that album. So those are my 5 Aerosmith songs from the 80s. Not an easy list to come up with.
Yeah, excellent. Wow, I agree with all of this. I think you did an excellent job of this. I think Push Comes to Shove and Cry Me a River are the 2 worst songs on a really good album. This Rock in a Hard Place. It's the band on the back, right? Conspicuously 2 different guitarists.
Yeah.
But yeah, Push Comes to Shove also has that kind of Louis Armstrong sort of vocal going on it as well.
Almost,
right?
You know what? I just thought of this. He's almost singing like he sang on the first record.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got that thing going on.
Yeah. And I don't like the movie, never liked the movie. Don't Get Mad, Get Even is kind of like stodgy and bluesy and almost too coagulated and cholesterol laden, right? You know, it's got a lot of that to it. The one I'm a little fonder of is I'm Down, and I'll give you a weird reason for this, because Adrian Belew covered it. And that makes it really cool to me. It's either on Lone Rhino or Twang Bar King. I think it's on Twang Bar King. But it always had an extra cool factor because he covered it as well. And it's only 2 minutes and 20 seconds on here, so that's okay as well. And it's up tempo and all that stuff. So I think I'm okay with I'm Down. So all right. So my side 2 of this Pump album, I know I called it Dump album. I called it Dumps earlier, plural. Sorry about that. But my side 2 of Aerosmith, Dump, begins with Jig Is Up from this album. And I wanted to have a little bit of a theme here. I've got 2 of them here. With this idea that when they do these slow, funky ones, I was never a Last Child fan. Again, this idea that I find that they're kind of awkward at it sometimes. And Joey Kramer is not the right guy to be doing this stuff. There's really no swing to these things. I do like the verses where it goes into these kind of Led Zeppelin-esque big stacked pancakes of power chords. That's kind of cool in this song, but the rest of it, I hate the chorus and I hate that funky part. And then on the same theme, Shame on You from this album is the same sort of thing with this really annoying sort of chorus and this slow, stodgy, sort of awkward funkiness to it. So I have a theme going for my first two tracks. Then I'm going to go up to Pump for What It Takes. I almost put Janie's Got a Gun on here as well, but that's them trying fairly hard to come up with a pretty good ballad. The ballads in Aerosmith start pretty good and just go down, 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 down over time. I love You See Me Crying. I love Home Tonight, right? But Janie's got at least a little bit of smarts to it, but What It Takes is them really being in that sort of a rote, corporate hair metal power mode. I don't think it's that good a song. It's not as bad as the ballads later. But then we go back to this album for Angel, which is a whole, I think it's the worst ballad of the entire 80s. It's even worse than What It Takes, and it's as bad as the later one. So yeah, really, really detest Angel on this. That chorus just drives me up the wall, and that little keyboard tinkle in it. And here's the other thing with Aerosmith and ballads. I mean, it's different. It's even worse with other bands. We won't go down this whole road, but I don't find him very believable. When we know everything we know about the Aerosmith guys, they don't seem like tender romantic guys. So I really don't believe them. I don't believe them on a ballad. But I really do like You See Me Crying and Home Tonight. I'm sold on those. But as time goes on, and maybe it's as we learn about all the bad blood and how nasty these guys were in those years, I ain't buying it anymore. And then finally, I'm gonna go with My Girl from Pump, which I just find kind of like a bouncy, almost like even it's got a bit of a Southern rock vibe in it, and an annoying pre-chorus in it. It's just this kind of poppy, weird, too playful kind of song on the Pump album. But myself, like you too. I mean, I do like these albums. I like all of these albums, and it was kind of hard. It wasn't hard coming up with 5, but it'd probably be quite hard coming up with 10. And I like what you said about Done with Mirrors. I took a really good look at Done with Mirrors. It's my least favorite of these albums, but the songs are all 6s and above sort of thing, right? There's nothing, like you say, that really stands out. Granted, I picked one, but there's not a lot on there that stands out as something that you could really complain about. It's just an overall fuzziness about that album that's complainable, I guess. But I don't know. What do you think of those 5?
Well, I think What It Takes is the better one compared to Angel, because What It Takes has a little bit of that, I don't know, hard-won wisdom going for it. It's kind of got a little bit of an old country feel to it. It's got accordion in it. But yeah. I mean, if you read about Steven Tyler was not good to the women in his lives at all. So yeah, it does fall a little bit flat. But yeah, pretty good choices. I think the thing that people will get out of this is that, and if you watch the 70s one too, we're really struggling to come up with patently bad songs by an otherwise great band. So unfortunately, I think we're going to find that as we move forward, it's going to get way easier. But I definitely wouldn't want anybody to stumble upon this, in their corner store, their $5 CD bin, and think, people keep talking about Aerosmith, I'm going to buy this and listen to it. I don't think that'd be the greatest thing.
Yeah. What a stupid title. Why did they call this Dump, right?
Yeah. And then you listen to it and go,
now I know. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. Thanks again, Tim, for joining us here on this Aerosmith trawl. And we're planning to do another episode where we're going to look at the rest of the catalog, right? But you can go back and look at our 70s episode. Let us know in the comments below what you guys think. What did we miss? What are we completely wrong on here? We've got a Patreon situation as well. When you join the Patreon thing, that's where you can be on our panels, and you can come to Metal and Music Trivia Night, which Mark has been really good at putting those things together and doing a lot of different panel stuff. And so that's by becoming a Patreon of our situation. And don't forget to subscribe and like and all that stuff. And we shall see you again next time.